Hello, welcome to David Eames On Your Mind, a conversation between friends about mental health issues. Hello, and welcome to David Eames On Your Mind, the first in a series of podcasts where we're going to be talking about subjects on your mind, about mental health issues, what might help your life to work better, what problems, what life is all about. Now, I'm joined today by Owen Oxley. Hi, Owen.
How you doing, dude?
And he's a very good friend of mine. We've known each other for 15 years or so.
At least.
And on keyboards, we've got Mikey. Mikey
Hello,
Markham. Hi.
Hello, everybody.
So our first one today is, what is mental health? Tricky question. Owen, what do you think is mental health?
Very popular at the minute, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of changed over the past few years for me quite drastically. And especially being a bit of a shit child and a bit awkward, a bit naughty. There was a lot of my time where I didn't really get to understand about mental health. I'm not saying use it as an excuse or blame it for a lot of my problems, but I can see now, obviously having children and being a child back in the day, that some of my issues were probably poor mental health. But so for me, it's a lot about, are you okay, fundamentally? And it doesn't matter, I don't suppose, if it's something that someone else wouldn't consider a problem, but it's all about your own mental stability so that you can just be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think you hit on something quite important there, is that being okay.
Yeah.
You know, there's one description of good mental health as very simplified as, I'm okay, you're okay.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people think, well, you're okay, but I'm not okay.
Yeah.
Or maybe a narcissist thinks they're okay and no one else is okay.
Yeah.
So we don't need any more than that.
No.
But I think mental health, it's kind of everything. Because without good mental health, nothing else really works, does it?
No. Or seems to matter. Because what a lot of us seem to strive for at the moment is either fortune, fame, or just being successful within whatever realm you're in. And that might be being a parent or at work or whatever. But it's really sad. I mean, it broke my heart when Robin Williams died. Mm-hmm. And there's been so many things documented about him knowing how people struggle. So he was always trying to make everyone else happy. But the fact he couldn't turn to anyone, being the legend that he was, that sort of, he made my childhood. I know that for a start. But even things like, there was Chester Bennington from Linkin Park, and all these people that you see that are projecting this normality that ultimately aren't happy. And I think that's why social media is such a double-edged sword for mental health. And even the negativity of social media, the fact that it's brought this to the forefront is so important, because it's insane to know that everyone's struggling their own way. Yeah. And sometimes it feels better to know that you're struggling just as much as I am in a selfish kind of way. But the fact that we can talk about it now is so much more important. I can remember, just on a tangent, there was a guy when I was at Egg, and he was off with stress. And the whole narrative around him was, yeah, fucking stress again. Yeah, stress. Oh, you pussy. Oh, you stress. And it was really toxic masculinity at its finest, like proper World War II trenches sort of stuff. And this guy was struggling his balls off.
Yeah.
And it's kind of horrible to see, because you look back now, it's like watching an old film and someone says one of the like trigger words now, and you think, oh, fuck yeah, you won't be able to film that now, Matt Lucas. Do you know what I mean? But I think, for me, the fact that it's there and the fact that people are acknowledging it is the best thing that could come out of anything.
Yeah. I think, they get this thing that people feel they've done everything right with their lives. They've maybe got the job and the marriage and the kids and the nice house, nice car. So why doesn't it mean more?
Yeah.
What is it all about? I ask people what they want in life. It's a really hard question, that. What do you want from life? And people often say, I want to be happy, which is kind of ridiculous in a way, because the things that make you happiest are also going to make you very sad.
Yeah.
The loss is an essential part of life. So how do we find that? How do we find what is good mental health? Maybe it's different for every one of us. What do you think, Mikey?
I'm really enjoying the direction the conversation's gone. And for me, mental health it's the same as physical health. We have different health sectors, and for some reason, the mental side's never taken on board or into account. It's, my physical health's doing this, and that. I'm really doing well with this. How you feeling? I've not checked in on that, actually. I don't know really how I'm feeling. So to feed to that, it's just having more awareness, more consciousness around checking in every so often, really thinking about, how is my life shaping up? Where am I right now? Am I happy with the position that I'm in and the dynamics that I'm sharing? Is there anything that's going unsettled? Am I having triggers, or things are happening in my life that aren't bringing me joy, bringing me happiness, bringing me contentment? And questioning that, bringing it to the horizon. There's probably a lot of characters you have involved in that, like where you're avoiding and so on, but just facing it a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm. I think over time we'll look at different ways of managing this. I think a key skill is something called reframing. So you might not be able to change the circumstances you're in, but you can change the frame that you put around them, so the way that you look at things.
Of course, yeah.
And that can have a big impact on how you feel about it. We'll also look at about anxiety. When it gets chronic, it's really debilitating. It's really difficult to live with.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we don't want to get rid of anxiety because it helps to keep us safe.
Of course. I had a question when I was driving it, and I thought to myself, is anxiety the bridge between flight and fight?
Well, it's just another aspect of how to deal with a threat. So I think that the anger is fear of a different colour. So it's a different way of dealing with a threat.
Okay.
And the third option that animals and humans have is freeze. So we don't deal with something at all. So it's fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah.
And we want to look at it. So if you're getting angry about something, it's okay, well, what's the threat? We need to look at that, analyse what the threat is.
Yeah.
How do you be happy? How do you find meaning in your life as well?
Yeah.
That's a really tricky one, because I believe that the universe doesn't supply us with meaning. For some people, they have religious or spiritual beliefs that they feel does that for them, and that's great for them. But for many these days, they're unanchored from that whole idea of what is life for. I had a client some time ago that, when we talked about is there life after death, and he said, well, if there isn't, none of it means anything, and that may be true. So how do we deal with that?
Yeah, but that's kind of difficult as well, because for me, I know that everyone wants to know what the meaning of life is. And obviously, I mean, there was a quote that someone said in the American office, and he said, I wish that they told me that these are the good times before I realised that they're gone.
Oh.
And that's massive, because to be in the moment of something is the most important thing. And I mean, from having children, good jobs, amazing experiences, because the next morning when you're tidying up, or the next day when you're back at work, it becomes a funk and it becomes frustrating, but because you're not enjoying the bit that you're doing. And I think for me, the whole meaning of life is just memories. It's making amazing memories, because they're what carry you through, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm on my own, if I'm struggling, I can remember something good, or they lift me. Because the problem is you can't hold on to anything forever. So, like, you can't take money with you, you can't take this and that, but you do your job to make sure you're comfortable, so that the memories are more free to enjoy. Because if I'm going to Alton Towers with the kids, I don't want to be worrying that the mortgage isn't going to be paid. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I want to have a wicked time, so I want to be fully engaged with that entire thing. But, like, with jobs, I've been in jobs where it's got really successful really quickly. And the best bits were always at the beginning, because everyone was together trying to do the same thing, trying to make this thing rise. But then once you get successful, you don't see those people as much anymore. And as much as from the outside looking in, it's projected as this massive successful thing, you're actually slightly more lonely. Does that make sense? So you need to remember the good times. So I think to think that if there's no afterlife, you're doing it for nothing, you've got, in my opinion, you've got to try and enjoy what you can in whatever part of the day.
Yeah, but I would slightly disagree there. It's not about the creation of memories. I think it's about being in that moment.
Yes.
The memory is a byproduct of that.
Yes, that's another bonus. So
Yeah.
the memory is the bonus of the enjoyment. Yeah,
But-
exactly.
But it's that, and to extend that as much as we can to whatever we're doing. I mean, people talk about mindfulness these days as though it's like a new invention. It's been around for thousands of years.
Yeah.
You know, Buddhists kind of went that way a little bit before, you know, modern pundits started talking about it, or people like me started talking about it. But it's that being aware that being alive is a good thing.
Yeah.
You know, I once heard Samuel L. Jackson say on an interview that any day above the grass is a good one.
Wow.
And that's a good start
It's true.
point.
Yeah.
I love what you just said then, though, about memories, because you can chase them like money. You can keep going out to go, we need to create a memory, make a memory. But then, again, that vicious cycle and that chase of trying to make something happen, you pull away from it.
Stress.
You create stress towards it. But just, as you said then, making as beautiful a time as possible by just being in the moment and enjoying it.
Yeah.
The byproduct is I've never thought of that before, and that's a really beautiful thing for me. This is going to be my counselling session.
good.
Here. I'm loving it. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that.
But I think it works with a lot of things, because everyone will say that night that you had that wasn't planned is the best night you have, because you're not worrying about it, you're not stressing about it. But I think in my life, there's been a lot of bits that I didn't particularly like, even down to when I was a kid. I had a paper round, and it was the worst paper round in the world, and it was in Duffield. It was up Broadway. It was fucking miles, and it was on. I had the Trader. Am I allowed to swear? I just swore.
I think we can swear.
Well, yeah, not too much.
I'm not gonna drop many bombs, but I didn't particularly like this, as you can tell from my swearing. But I had to convince myself it was okay. I had to convince myself that I enjoyed it, and I made a game of it. It was stupid, but I made a game in my own head that I was doing that made it pass a lot faster. And I think for me, the more that I was sort of grinding into myself and just being miserable and focusing on the negative, but that's where I think that was as a young brain, I could get myself out of that. But I think a lot of people struggle when they can't help but focus on the negative. Everything's bad. Everything's doom and gloom.
Yeah, and sometimes things are bad that it's really hard to get beyond that.
Yeah.
But if you're not caught in that trap of some desperate external situation or a health situation, then how do you enjoy every passing moment? And people often think in terms of bucket list activities. You mentioned making a memory. Well, how about just enjoying whatever you're doing?
Exactly.
Walking the dog, cleaning the house, cooking a meal.
Yeah.
They're all valuable activities. Of being with another person.
Yeah.
And actually trying to be with that person and experience them and communicate with them.
Yeah.
Where do you think we've got that mentality from then, where in order to make a memory, it's got to be this beautiful existential thing where we're walking in a valley or something, or
is that
near
social
a
media, do you think?
I
The projection?
I think it has a part to play. I think it has had a part to play of people judging their own lives compared to the fabulous photo somebody else is putting on, but we don't know how anyone else is feeling.
No.
I think another aspect that we're going to have to look at during these series of podcasts is about who owns our feelings. Okay, or you made me feel bad.
Yeah,
well, no, you didn't.
if you choose to.
You didn't. Now, I don't choose my emotions, okay? That's the way we differentiate between emotions and thoughts. You can choose what you think, you can't choose what you feel. But you can choose what you think about what you feel. Okay?
Yeah. Just to twist your brain a little bit more.
And that's going to change how you feel in the future. So it's about owning your feelings. It's a big, important thing. There's no one can make me feel anything.
Yeah.
I may feel something as a result of their actions or what's happened to them or what they're doing towards me, but those feelings belong to me.
I have had to visit that. Obviously, we've been friends for a long time, and you have just been counselling me non-stop, one way or another, which essentially made me want to kill you when I first met you. But we've got through that. And I think
mostly,
yeah. Well, I think there was a lot of death threats on both sides, but it was we've got past it. But even obviously, I've been with Stace since '98, so 23 years, long time, 24 years this year. But the amount of times, because she is the most important person to me and the most important thing, there's a lot of times where I can take massive offence because she's known me so much more than anyone else. So I always automatically think she's been through the whole train of thought that I've already been through to get to this ridiculous idea, which it normally is, because I'm a bit mental. But the problem is the amount of times recently where she's done or said something that I would either go a bit into myself, maybe a bit quiet, begrudge it, until it came out in this big argument, that I'm just reminding myself, like, look, did she throw that dart with malice intention, of the dart being metaphorical clearly, to make me feel like a lump of hammered shit? Or was it her frustrations because I didn't do what she was expecting me to do? And obviously we expect each other to react and do certain things in a certain way, and when they don't, that's why we react in this explosive way. And that's why I think a lot of the times, you know, when you tell someone something that's true, they react really angrily, because ultimately they know you're right. And that's one of those things that coming to terms and owning that sort of thing it's a lot more peaceful for me. Mm-hmm. So I have reacted badly in the past, but then when I can sit there and go, all right, I can own that. Yeah, you're right. It is a big hump to get over, but once you get over it, it's really freeing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we say the worst things to those that we care the most about because we can get away with it. Maybe we don't have the same level of inhibition that we have in someone we've just met.
Yeah.
And we can say terrible things, but I think, you know, that we'll talk again in future sessions about what love is. That's a tricky question.
Yeah.
But I think the highest expression of love from my perspective is forgiveness and acceptance.
Mm. Yeah.
And forgiving ourselves, that's how to love ourselves as well is going to be part of this. How to accept yourself and to forgive yourself for the things that you maybe don't think you've done the best you could.
Yeah. It's
relationships is going to be a big part of this as well. How do we value someone else?
Mm. Yeah.
Especially when you've been with someone for so long, there's this sort of expectation that you know my triggers, you know how I'm going to operate here, so why are you acting in such a way?
Yeah. Not only do I need you to be an amazing wife and mum and parent and this and organise trips and holidays, and I also need you to remember all my shit.
Yeah,
and make sure you
that's interesting.
It's tricky. I mean, my thing is, I don't like things to be dragged out. Mm-hmm. So when something is kicked off, I like to be able to visit it immediately and go, listen, and what I meant by this was this, and this meant that, and I didn't mean that, I'm sorry. Mm. I can apologise freely. Mm. But the problem is, not everyone can.
No.
And the currency of an apology for some people is like giving you a kidney. Whereas to me, if I apologise, I mean it. But because of the way some people have been brought up that you don't apologise, or it's like it's given out very rarely, when you're battling that and you've got two different ways of dealing with a situation, I think that can twist my brain more than anything, because I want to work forward to get it finished, and then someone like a partner could then, the way they deal with it is being quiet, forgetting about it, and then we don't talk about it anymore. For me, finding the balance between that is vital, because it's so difficult that your coping mechanisms are completely different, but you both need to do them, and they both wind each other up.
And that's it, and that's where the acceptance things comes in. That two different people operate in different ways, and so the only thing we've got any chance of controlling is ourselves, and that's tricky enough.
Yeah.
So waiting for somebody else to behave in a different way is not going to work.
No.
A favourite phrase of mine is a quote from the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. You know, he was the old guy in Gladiator.
Yeah.
And he said, effectively, it's not events themselves that trouble the mind, but the importance that we give to them.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that's something from Stoic philosophy there. It's not an idea that he came up with. He's quoting earlier philosophers.
Yeah.
But it's that whole thing again of that ownership. And, you know, we can look at how you own that. A subject that comes up, I know it doesn't bother you, Owen, because you turn up for the opening of an envelope, which is public speaking. But, you know, Mikey, you said that you found that tricky sometimes. Mm. But it's relatively easy to fix if you get the right mindset.
Yeah.
Social anxiety, you know, it can be a huge condition for people. And I think social anxiety has its roots in our evolutionary makeup. The savannas of Africa, if you fell out with a tribe, you were going to die.
Yeah.
So actually keeping
in socially,
that's why people have these huge levels of anxiety. Because you've got to think, we've not evolved over the last 100,000 years. We've had cultural evolution, but our basic fears have not evolved at all.
No, we've just got more comfortable.
Yeah.
We've got warmer. and we have everything on tap.
Yeah.
So why would you evolve?
Yeah. So we'll look to understand how those basic emotions work, where fear comes from, and what it's trying to do for us.
I heard it recently. Somebody saying, and it comes back round to what is mental health.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a friend said it on alcoholism. It's a disease of perception, and I think the same with the mental health aspect is the way you internalise things and perceive things. I think they talk a lot in comedy at the minute about being offended and letting that come in. I believe a thought's supposed to only last 10 seconds, but it's our holding on to that thought of what happens, and then we let it build and perpetuate it from on and on and on.
Yeah, no one could offend me.
No.
You could choose to take offence.
Yeah, I might take offence at something, but no one could offend me.
And that thing with what you were saying about public speaking then, my perception at one stage ended up becoming, I don't deserve to be here. What have I got to give? What am I offering? Mm-hmm. And then when I built that perception back up of, oh no, Mikey, you have been on a journey. You have got your badges in this and that and this. And then I remembered my why of being on that stage. It really calmed me in that atmosphere. I was like, no, I deserve to be here. Yeah. I can be here. And that was the perception was just rearranged and built. So I think perception's really key towards all this.
Yeah. And what shapes those perceptions, this is where it gets more tricky, and I'm not quite sure how we'll deal with this over time, but we'll try and figure a way through it, is that our unconscious stuff, the stuff that's shaped in early childhood or by earlier experiences, maybe more recent experiences, traumatic experiences, shape the way we respond to things. And because that's happening at an unconscious level, it's not a question of giving someone a coping mechanism and away you go. You know, I've been delivering therapy with clients for years and helping with that, and it's not quite sure how we can help in this setting outside of that therapeutic context, but maybe if we can help people to be more reflective on how they've become who they are today.
Yeah.
I mean, that can be a way forward.
I know, because obviously my parents, they went through a divorce when I was 4, and I know that a lot of my anxieties and a lot of my elements will just infuriate Stace. And it's difficult because I understand how frustrating it is, and I understand how silly a lot of it is, but it's sort of impacted a lot of my life, and not just because they got divorced, because it's one of those things that obviously shit happens, but at the time it was quite rare in school, so there wasn't that many people that didn't have mum and dad at home, because not as many people got divorced back in the day. Not everyone was happy, and there was a lot of affairs, but there wasn't anyone that was willing to sort of like step up and cut the cord. So for me, there's been a lot of things where it's that internal dialogue, because someone's either seeing you as less or whatever. And I mean, it's never affected me enough. If the thoughts ever crept in, even like being a graphic designer, I'm not a qualified, trained graphic designer, but this is what I've done for over the past 10 years. I know I'm better than people who've been to university. So because, I suppose, through experience in life and visiting certain places and just being older now, that I've got enough nuggets in my brain to go, oh yeah, you're not a real graphic designer, but you've seen 30 that are, and they don't compare to you. So that's fine. Yeah. Do you know? And it's that sort of coping mechanism to know I'm doing all right.
Well, one thing I've seen, happen with you, Owen, over the years, is you being able to own your own talent.
Yeah.
Because for a long time I felt you were held back by your perception of other people thinking less of you than you deserved.
Yeah, I think because I've always been quite a practical person. So when we were at Egg together, I didn't ever progress up the corporate ladder, even though I trained a number of the people that then became management. I actually trained them how to do it. But a lot of them saw more of a practical side of me, that they needed to keep me doing the grunt element. Like, I was a good salesman. All that PPI you guys have bought, apologies, that was me. But I was really good, so I made them a lot of money. So they wouldn't want to make me a manager or a team leader, because it would stop that money coming in. Same as they used me to refurbish a whole the whole office, if you remember, for like a third of the cost, or if that. And it was because I was practical. So because I didn't have an escape plan to sort of really stake my claim and demand more and all the rest of it. I was always just sort of mooching along. Whereas it's true, yeah. It is difficult to know your own worth until you can sit back and then look back at it and think, actually, I am pretty good.
I got a thought as well. To some people struggle with their mental health because they reflect on their childhood and they reflect on their moments, and then they feel guilt and shame because they think, I've not had anything happen to me. You hear all these stories of people with quite tragic, painful, tenacious stories, and they're like, well, my mum and dad were together and then this happened, and they go into it and they don't look at the sort of maybe microcosms of conditioning that was in there, where you're this perfect child and you've got to live up to this perfect platform. That could be a hindrance. So a lot of people feel a lot of guilt and shame trapped for struggling with their mental health when they've had a quote unquote archetypal existence.
Yeah, it's certainly not been unusual for me to work with clients over the years, because with all my clients I tend to take their history from earliest days, and they'll start off with saying, well, I had a happy childhood, it's a good childhood, and we look at it and think, well, it turned out to be a bit suboptimal,
Yeah,
that's a great word.
Traditional British parents who maybe, couldn't hug anything, let alone their kids, and really struggle to communicate emotionally. Again, we'll look at this, that emotions are a learnt activity. Recent research shows this. It used to be thought we were all inborn, but we need to learn emotion. There's something called the granularity. That's the degree of fineness of emotion that we can describe. We need to learn it, and if we haven't learned it as kids, it's harder.
Yeah,
it's not unusual for me to see people in strong emotional states and say, "Well, what are you feeling?" I don't know. They might say. Because they've not got the language to articulate it.
No, and it surprised me in the past that people struggle to say things like "I love you," or to be told. I've told people in the past, and they've just because obviously there's the big thing with a relationship, as in a partner relationship. Oh, have you said it yet? Have you said it? Back in the day, when you're at school, do you know what I mean? Yeah. Who's the first one to say it and all that shit? But it's not that important, because it is a feeling, and obviously it can change. But there are times when, you've had my back forever, and there's been times when we finished playing on a Friday night. I said, "Love you, man." It's like, "Yeah, you too," because it's been a wicked night. We've had a nice night, but we've connected on a couple of things, and I take that for what that is. It's like, you're on my mind. We bonded, and it was lovely. It's not like I'm going to lie in bed thinking, "Oh my God, I think Dave's going to propose to me." I hope he don't want to move in.
Oh,
do you know what I mean?
You've ruined it now.
Yeah, but for me, it's just being, and it's just being able to get that feeling out a little bit, and it doesn't make me clam up and make me feel weird. Which, because I don't feel that, I find it difficult when someone struggles to accept it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But it's a whole bag of, well, not just worms, but all sorts of stuff. So somebody might be saying "I love you" all the time without ever being able to mean it, and they're just using it as a way of manipulating someone else.
Yes.
I've come across someone who can't say "I love you" because someone who abused them in childhood used that phrase a lot. So
wow.
So it has a different loading on it.
So what do you do with that? Do you have to retrain another word to mean something as...
Well, you just try and work through it, and a way of escaping that past.
Yeah.
There's a whole thing of what's happened in the past. Can we escape it, and not to compartmentalize it necessarily, but to put it into a different context.
Yes.
Wow.
To almost to see, okay, what was positive in it, in as much as people can take this view, well, that thing happened to me and that's ruined the rest of my life.
Yeah.
That'd give me shivers, that story. Yeah. Genuinely.
But it doesn't necessarily have to ruin the rest of your life. It's about, okay, what's the context there? I've learnt early on how bad life can be.
Wow.
But maybe that can empower me to do other things with my life.
Yeah.
I was thinking that when we were talking of the conditioning, the people that I meet that are sickeningly good at certain things and really elevated themselves, the commonality does seem to be a very troubled background, and things happen in that. So is there an element or a nuance of having struggling mental health that has pushed people to become phenomenal characters?
Absolutely. I'm convinced, I really blame my parents because they didn't treat me harshly enough when I was really young. I could have been Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I wouldn't want to be Prime Minister.
No.
But
Could have been Owen.
Imagine.
I've always been relatively content, and maybe that's because they weren't pushing very much. I was adopted at the age of 6 weeks, but the people who were my real parents who brought me up were both from working class background, didn't place much stock by academic achievement. I was a bit mystifying to them, I think.
I think my background is what we're sitting on, that like the buses or being a filmmaker or whatever it's been, has really been on this seek for validation.
You're proving a point.
People saying, you're good, you are good at what you do.
Yeah.
And it's because my mum, powerful, amazing woman, but terrifying and never displayed any love at all. Really. And I think she'll be quite open to agree with that. She said to me, my dad, both of us, I never wanted kids. I had you because your dad wanted kids. So it was always your dad's responsibility was to look after you. And I was supposed to be doing my thing, which you did do well. So I've consciously sort of accepted every time I'm on a bit of a tenacious path and a mission of, I'm going to do this now.
Yeah.
I have to keep reflecting back in going, am I doing this for the right reason? Or is it for that, well done, Mikey, you are a good lad kind of thing?
I've seen you do it. I've seen you prove people wrong. And whereas I would sometimes maybe bask in it a little bit more than you're a few steps ahead of me because even though you know you're going to prove them wrong, before you start, you know you're going to prove them wrong. So you've already managed to sort of go, you don't need to be, you're not gloating or being braggadocious, whatever the word is. But when I prove someone wrong, or when I prove myself, that is an achievement within me. That's nice because, to do what I do when no one believed in me or no one backed me or when no one at school or wherever, and I was in basic studies and I struggled. The big thing is that I do it, or I have done it in the past just to prove someone wrong. And I think because I did that in sort of, not in a toxic way, but I've done that just to like go, Whereas I've seen you do it, and it wasn't to prove them wrong, sorry, it's to prove a point. And even though your childhood was less traumatic than mine to a degree, you've still got that. I've seen that within you to be able to go, we'll show them, kids, sit down. And then before you know it, we've delivered something that they can't even fathom. But he knew he was going to do it.
Yeah.
And it was like, I don't need to ask for permission. I don't need to just to validate myself. But there you go. That's what you need.
Yeah.
And it's that one of those things. I think we all do it in our own certain way.
Yeah, but I think, for me, it's not necessarily about childhood security. It's about having screwed up in every possible way at some point in my life. So if somebody's not getting something quite right now, it doesn't make them less of a person.
Yeah, so that's just experience and time.
I think, it's just being an old git, really.
Yeah.
Brought that.
Mate, honestly, I mean, I'm 41 now, and I struggle sometimes, even when I'm talking to someone, especially about my industry. And it's like, I've been sat in the office before talking to Mikey or someone else, and I've been talking away, and then Sam, my best mate who's known me since we were 2, has come out and go, you know loads. And I take it for granted. Because it's just been built over 10 years. And it's weird things like different codes for this and that and different shortcuts on Illustrator and all this other daft stuff that I kind of take for granted. But then he doesn't come to me and say, you're really good. He does it in the typical British take you the piss kind of way, which is how I react. That's how me and you get on. Because it doesn't ever seem like genuine affection. It's always sarcasm and ribbing. But it works because I know that he's recognising what I'm doing, and I take more from that than someone coming and going, you're really good, you are, because I'm suspicious. If you come up and start giving me compliments, I'm thinking, nah.
What does he want?
Yeah, what do you need?
Interesting.
Yeah. I saw the American comic once thing, Russell D. Hunter, the guy from Georgia, he's saying that Americans don't get the way Brits relate. A Brit will say, hey, this is my friend Jeremy, and he's a bit of a prat. And the Americans will be going, well, why would you say that? Whereas the Brits go, oh, they're good mates then.
Yeah.
I think it's got to be built on an understanding, though, that you have got each other's back to start. Because my relationships from Ripley Boy, it was all just taking the piss out of each other all the time. but then it got a bit aggressive and it was of this low frequency nature.
Yeah.
Whereas now my best mate Jagger, who I know we've been through thick and thin, we've had all the experiences, when we're taking the mick out of each other, the bald head or the spots he's got, whatever, we're doing it in genuine love. We're leading with love with that.
Without a doubt.
But it's been misunderstood in the past with people where we've tried to build from the start and it didn't quite work, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's about knowing your audience. So Owen and I have a bantering relationship. We enjoy that. It's fun. But some of my friends I would never do that with.
Yeah.
Because it's just not how they operate.
Yeah.
And again, that's something, we can look at in the future, how you treat everyone differently. You work out what people's needs are.
Yeah.
So, the golden rule was always put down, from the Bible, do unto others as you would be done by. Well, how about rewriting that to do unto others as they would be done by?
I like that.
Yeah.
I got the golden rule down on my arm, but that's much better. I'm going to scribble that down now.
The thing is, even our relationship, when there's only me and you, when we play PlayStation on a Friday night, we sit, obviously you're at your house, I'm at my house, for people that don't understand or know, most people do. We sit, you're on your computer, I'm on mine, we've got headsets on, playing a game. But if there's other people in the lobby, that's someone that I may have introduced, my brother or friend or someone, or David's brought someone on board, or however it is that built in, it's a different dynamic each time. If it's just me and him, it can be it's unlocked.
The most authentic.
You've got any emotion. I can sit and pour my heart out, or we can just rip each other the whole night. But the whole time, it doesn't feel any different. You don't go to bed worrying about each other or concerned about what's been said. But other people can be involved, and that changes the dynamic slightly. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, completely.
Even when we've been out at the pub together or whatever, you've got a look that you can check in with each other, but it's not the same sort of closeness.
So what that comes down to then is, how do we form, and this is something that can be a big part of the work we do, is how do we form those secure relationships where we can do whatever we want in the relationship, we can say whatever we want, and we walk away and we know it's there when we go back to it.
Yeah, that's strange, because I've only got that with a handful of people.
It's a rare thing, and for some people, they really struggle to ever achieve it. And it's down to something called attachment style, the way we attach to others. And again, that's often down to early childhood experiences. It's only by reflecting on that and understanding what your attachment style allows you to start to change it.
Yeah, I think for me, I've always learned through practical output. And I think because I've been taken advantage of in work and things so many times, either by people or by stuff, because I'm quite trusting, I'm very trusting, I just want to make people happy. And I've always thought, if you can, you should. That's just kind of in the way that I've done anything, because I've either worked in favours with people, I'll do this for you if you do that for me, or whatever it is. But the amount of times I've been taken advantage of, it's put a different barrier up. Again, through experience.
Yeah.
But it's one of them where now I will, or I've in the past, I've like quoted above what I would ever want for the job, just to see if someone's serious, because the amount of people that will literally take the piss, even having a clothing brand, the closest friends and family that will ring me and go, "Oh, let me know if you can get anything." I'm like, "I can get it all," and they're like, "Oh wow, oh what do you need me to do?" I'm like, "Go on the website and buy it and support me. I'll support you." But because they see it as this creative, nice to have, not need to have, they want it for free. They want to be gifted, and it's. I think there's a massive currency in people showing you their bellies, because as soon as someone shows you that, and you've invested all this time and effort into them, that you actually see their true person. Does that make sense? Yeah. And I've taken quite a bit from that in the past.
And what you're touching on there, I think, is something that is also we'll have to work on in these series of podcasts, is boundaries.
Yeah.
Because, they're absolutely central to good mental health. When people feel that other people are crossing their boundaries on a regular basis, that's a really uncomfortable place to be.
We've probably got a year of content here, just thinking that, genuinely.
Or maybe someone's boundaries are set so far away they never let anyone get close.
Yeah.
But having that awareness, or, where people are bringing up children, how do you help children to establish their boundaries? So I've worked with clients who had a very controlled childhood, and as soon as those controls were off, when they left home and went to uni, they go ape.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy, because they've not learnt how to set any boundaries for themselves when it's all been completely controlled. So you've got to allow people to fail to learn, because failure isn't failure. Failure is learning.
Yeah.
Yes, when we get it wrong, that's why I feel I've learned a lot, because I've screwed up so often.
Yeah.
It's funny how young that mistakes can put fear in people. I go into schools and I do this activity where we have a blank piece of paper and they've got to draw a picture of their face with their eyes closed. So we're all trying to draw faces, but I've gone around and there's so many kids, and this is year 3, year 4, where they haven't wrote a thing on the paper. And then I stop and I say, we all had a laugh. And then I said, who did it? And they put their hands up. And then I said, who didn't? And then we look around and more put their hands up than did do it. Yeah. And I say, well, what's the problem there? Why didn't you do it? Your eyes were closed. There was no right or wrong way about it. And they said, because I didn't want to do it wrong.
Yeah.
I was like, what? A 7-year-old kid has this terror where it's a fun activity where we're writing stuff down, eyes closed, about being wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
And what does that say about their experience of being parented?
Yeah. But it's even more difficult having children and seeing people like they've got a rule book, this rigid thing. And I'm not saying I'm perfect, 'cause I know I'm definitely not perfect by any stretch. And my childhood was kind of strange, because I had my mum and my stepdad. Didn't get on with my stepdad at my mum's, and I had my dad and my stepmom at my dad's, and I really got on really well with my stepmom. But there was no real clear. We were shown love unconditionally, both sides, especially from my mum. But there wasn't anything in particular that was really holding us back. Like, yeah, our bedtime was a bit earlier than next door, but we knew certain kids that they had no TV. Everything was religious. They couldn't, like the Michael Jackson Thriller album or the History album came out, and one of the pages was the Thriller music video, and that page got ripped out. They couldn't even see that. Then they got bought a game for a PlayStation which had a light gun. Can you remember the Time Crisis? That got taken off them. So once they hit an age that they could make their own decisions, it exploded into this chaos. And it completely backs up what you said. But to see it live is insane, because even now I'm constantly double checking myself all the time. We were watching some videos of the kids the other day, because the kids have found like Google Photos and they like watching themselves as kids. But to see how far they've come and how far they've changed, and obviously my eldest is 14 at the end of the month. Her personality is being carved at the moment. And that's one of the most difficult things, because there's no answer of how to deal with it properly, because she kind of doesn't know what's happening.
Yeah. There is an answer, which is to love her.
Of course.
Because this is it. You know, everyone knows exactly how children should be raised, apart from those who are doing it.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to be having opinions on that. But what would be good to work on is things like the guilt that parents can feel for, wow, I've got it wrong, or, you know, again, that suboptimal word. And, you know, if parents get angry sometimes, well, that's kind of okay, because if the parents never get it wrong, what do the children learn from that? You know, the children learn from negative experiences as well as positive ones.
Yeah, even more so sometimes.
Yeah. So, you know, getting rid of that guilt, that sense of that I've got to be perfect as a parent, which kind of bleeds into the child's got to be perfect, and then they don't write on a piece of paper in case they get it wrong.
Which is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the big thing for me, the big takeaway of anything is that I know that when they're not with me, because I get on with everyone else's kids really well. They think I'm brilliant, funny, all the rest of it, because I'm the guy with Tourette's that gives them sweets and probably too many crisps. My kids, they just roll their eyes at that. But I know when they're with someone else, they're angels. So I take a lot from that, but it is kind of strange to see that, even when me and Mikey were talking the other day, because Ella's got a really free little life. It's completely different to any other child that I've ever seen being raised on a farm with all this exposure. But it's difficult to give you advice to say you should do or you could do, because even having 2 children, what works with one doesn't always work with the other. You've got to try and remember that it's all an individual brain.
Subjective.
Do you know what I mean? It's really difficult.
Yeah.
But knowing that if you're trying your hardest is okay. Yeah. It means a lot, I think.
Yeah, children are miraculous. I never cease to be amazed by children growing up.
Yeah.
Just think of it. If you're going to design a machine that's going to be parachuted into the world with no information.
Yeah.
And then that machine is going to learn how to interact with the world, how to speak, how to build bridges, fly aircraft, paint paintings. It's
insane.
It's impossibly brilliant.
Yeah.
But it's also mysterious. What leads children to... I mean, with being adopted, I know I was a very different animal to my parents, so I know the difference that genetics has. But at the same time, there are many of their values that I interpreted, and the way I feel about myself in the world was much set by them.
Yeah.
That for my father, integrity was a big thing for him. He was a plumber originally, and then he eventually became a building contractor, and it was a big thing for him about integrity. And I think that's just a value I still hold. I probably value that above all others in many ways.
Yeah, I think that's where me and you connected, because obviously with my dad also being a builder, and integrity was vital, because you don't get paid before, you get paid after, and a lot of the times people find reasons why not to pay you.
Yeah.
And back in the day when there's no social media to call out whoever it was, you just had to suck it up, and it's a painful thing. But I think that's where me and you have always connected, because it's the most important thing in our opinion.
And I was only 25 when my father died, which leads me on to something else that we'll have to talk about, which is grief and dealing with loss.
Yeah.
And moving past that, because grief is inevitable unless you die young.
Yeah. So I'll never forget reading when my auntie died. She had breast cancer, and this was probably about 10 years ago. And my uncle put something on social media saying, "Please don't moan about getting old. It's not a gift we all get." And it it really kind of hit me, because the thing is, it's really easy to be moaning. You know, when you see someone stereotypically British and you go, "All right, how are you? Yeah, not so bad." It's not so bad. You got up this morning, you dropped the kids off, you've had a cup of tea and some crumpets, you've done a bit of work, now you're on a podcast. That's not fucking bad. That's really good. No one else gets that. That's not a gift for everyone. So for me, it was trying to stop with the always moaning, everything's bad. Even though you're not feeling bad, it's just everything, instead of being an upturn, is a downturn. Like we share a mutual friend that struggled to conceive. And since they've had children, have done nothing but dedicate a social media channel to moaning about having children. And it kind of blows my mind, because I want to go back in a time warp and like sit them back and go, right, you've got no kids. You're not fucking happy. I'm going to give you the gift of these children. Now you're pissed off that you've got them. And I'm not saying it's not hard, because it is hard. It's extremely difficult, because you constantly question yourself and them, and are you doing the right thing, the wrong thing? You've got everyone else's opinions. You're looking at social media. Your brain's just mangoed all the time. But when you strive for something, you get it, and you're like, oh, shit. You're like, it's not. Just embrace it. But I think and that's where I upset people a lot of the time, because I'll be very direct, and I go on Facebook, I go, do you want to stop moaning about your kids and maybe embrace them? And I'm being genuine, because what you've done for a year is just project this absolute negative life when you're missing out. Mate, they go past like a Porsche. Honestly, it goes past so fast, and it's terrifying. But it's... I don't suppose you can live anyone else's life for them, can you?
No, and pointing stuff like that out, it probably has very little effect.
Yeah,
but it's what you're doing is caring for them.
Yeah. And I have had people in the past where they haven't spoke to me for a number of years and then come back and gone, do you know what?
Yeah,
I get
you were right.
But that's their journey that they've been on.
Exactly.
They've got to go through it.
Yeah, and I'm not doing it to be an arsehole, but even when we were working before together, there was a guy, and he was 10 years my senior, and it wasn't until we left Egg that he came to visit me, and he said, I always admired you because you could say what you thought. And I was like, what do you mean? Yeah. You could say what you think. He's like, I never thought I could. I was like, do you do it now? He says, oh yeah, all the time. I love it. It's the best thing I've ever done. I'm like, but you're 50. Like you've wasted 50 years. And I'm not saying you have to be a dick. You don't have to just cut people down. But you can let people know what you like and what you want and your opinion on things. And that was kind of validating for me to a point, because I know that I was very Marmite. Or I've always been very Marmite, and I'm cool with that. But it's weird when someone comes and goes, I took quite a bit from that, and I'm like, okay, that's nice.
Might have been the shove in a direction. It
Yeah.
can maybe potentially have the adverse effect as well.
Yeah.
But I suppose what we're coming back to is that disease of perception of somebody else. I think we're all sat on treasure. I think we're all there. We've all got this answer in us to find this contentment, this happiness, this feeling that we were talking about earlier. And maybe you got hurtled into yours, or through your genetics, you might just be predispositioned to be able to look into that chest and go, "Oh, I've got the treasure."
Yeah.
But some other people, they need to find that key. They need to find the way to open that treasure box, and you can't force it open for them. You've got to let them go on their journey and be able to find that treasure inside them. And it is a long journey for some people.
Which is a very important point, Mikey. You know, when I'm working in my counselling clients, is I never take the credit for any progress they make, because they've done it.
Yeah.
You know, all I've ever done is accompany them on their journey and try to encourage them that they can make it. But I don't know how they get there. They have to do it for themselves.
And all of us come from the place of love. Like, we're all coming from, I genuinely want you to see what you've got in front of you.
Yeah.
But it always has to come back down to them making them moves, them making them decisions of, oh, this is my responsibility. I've got to take on board this. But again, it's your approach on how, if it irritates you to the core and you're like, dude, you want to shake you and just move you to it.
Yeah.
Maybe for some people that will really resonate with and be like, dude, thank God you shook me up in that moment.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not all the time. Because a lot of the times I'll either block someone or I'll mute them for a month or something. You know, the problem is with the Facebook algorithms, because you can have 1,000 friends, but you see the same 6 doing something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You get into that little rut. And I just, like, it's easy to say enjoy what you have when you're moaning about what you have yourself.
Yeah.
But it's just, I think, are you warm? Have you got food? Are you comfortable? Is everything okay?
Bare
Like,
necessities.
as long as your foundation, if your foundations are okay, the main thing is it's okay to not be okay. It doesn't matter even if you've got the moon on a stick. But sometimes I think when you can revisit and reevaluate what you've got yourself, and it might mean that you need to take the dog for a walk, or it might mean that you need to stick music on for a minute. Like for me, when I mow the lawn, I have my headphones on and it's half an hour to myself. And Stacey said, "Oh, you love doing it because you can listen to your music." I'm like, "No, I'm just defogging, just a minute, because I know no one wants me for that 5 minutes. No one needs me because they know that I'm busy. But if I'm doing anything else that doesn't look physically active, then it's all right to shout me so I can get frustrated." Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's boundaries for me. Do you know what I mean? Because I had a friend that I'd give either the advice where I'm trying to help and fix, and I realised, oh, that didn't work. So then I thought, oh, I'll hold space where they can just speak and let them come to their own terms. But I realised after 6 months, 7 months, it was always this repetition of the same problem.
Yeah.
Like a boyfriend that they hate, that they do. And I thought, I've tried so many approaches, but at some point, for my own solace, my own mental health, I've got to shut doors to it and say, I love you to bits, but either we can't talk about this anymore, or we've just got to be on a completely different trajectory.
Yeah. So there's 2 things there. There's firstly the fact that you can't fix anyone else.
Yeah.
You struggle to fix yourself.
Yeah.
And so giving advice to other people is a pretty fruitless exercise. And the other thing is that we don't know what the causes are of that other person's difficulties, and often they're unconscious forces that are shaping the behaviour. Many behaviours, like, oh, stop drinking. Well, okay, but I've got to get rid of the pain that makes me want to drink in the first place.
Yeah.
It's not that simple, and we really don't know what's going on for other people. So again, what I want to do in these podcasts is to explore stuff. We've just been kind of rambling today.
Yeah.
But I think we've touched on a few subjects, and I want to see that good mental health is simultaneously very simple, of just being okay, and enormously, perhaps infinitely complicated, because there are many different threads that weave together that make the cloth of our everyday existence, that make us who we are and how we exist in the world, and getting to that point of, well, it's not events themselves that trouble the mind, but the importance that I give to them. Well, I've got to understand where that importance comes from. and
Yeah.
who I am. So, again, reaching back even further into the past on the temple of the oracle at Delphi in ancient Greece, it said, "Know thyself" on the outside of it. And knowing yourself is at the heart of all this, because how can we fix something unless we know what a problem is?
Yeah.
So thanks, guys. It's been a blast today, this first podcast, and tune in soon where we'll be fixing on another subject. Who knows what that's going to be?
I thought we've got a lot to choose from after today.
Yeah. Yeah. I've enjoyed that, dude.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Cheers,
Nice one,
matey.
mate.